This is your wife, Leon Margulis. Oh no, oh no. He spells it with an O. How's that, Leon? Better? Hello there, Leon. How are you? I'd like to wish you a happy birthday. And by the way, on my left is one of our dogs. His name is Phineas Cat McCool. He thinks he's a cat. He's a cat trapped in a dog's body. Go away, Phineas. Deb, you want to come get Phineas, please? Thank you. I'm glad to be able to do this, talk about your life and ours as they are intertwined. I possibly may not know you the best, but I probably know you the longest of anybody. After all, we met when you were only 13 months old. You were born at 125 Church Street. You were delivered by a doctor. His name was Leonidas Margulis. And because he, quote, had saved your life, Pop decided to name you Leon Francis in honor of the doctor. There are many rumors as to where you were born, whether you were born in a house, whether you were born in a hospital, whether you were born on a kitchen table or brought by a bat. I think you were born on a kitchen table somewhere between beets and borscht. At 125 Church Street, your father and mother, my father and mother, lived with our grandparents on my father's side. They came to this country from Russia in the year to this country about 1887. Our grandfather, Morris Margulis, was born in Bucharest, Romania in 1862, and he journeyed to Odessa, Russia, where he met his wife, our grandmother, Sarah Trachtenberg. They were married in 1884. Upon coming to this country, they ended up in Philadelphia, and he was a tailor. My grandmother, in order to make additional money, would start to serve food out of the kitchen at 125 Church Street, unbeknownst to my grandfather. She would do this at lunchtime. When he found out upon it, they decided to open up a restaurant, and they opened a restaurant, a kosher restaurant, at 225 Market Street. And most of the Jewish people would come to eat in that restaurant. People like the Grabowski brothers, Sam Dariff from Dariff Clothes, and nearly every major Jewish person, rich or poor, would come to the restaurant. Here we have an early glimpse of our father. And here we have pictures of our father, who's on the left. Uncle Willie is in the center. Our grandmother is on the right. And the girl underneath is a cousin called Anna Margulis. This is a picture of our grandmother holding you or me. However, since this is about your life, let's assume it is you. This must have been taken in 1931 because she died in 1932. Here's a picture of our mother. holding you or me, but let's pretend it's you. This is probably taken either on Church Street or the restaurant on Market Street. Now here's a picture of one of the earliest pictures, it's recognizable, of you and me, our father and mother. You are on the right side, I believe. No, left side. I'm the one eating. This is another picture of you and me. I think they had a law saying that when we passed the restaurant, we always had to look at it. As you know, our father had been married before. When he first, after he got out of the army in World War I, he went back to live in France and other countries, and he became a smuggler. He married a person by the name of Mimi, and they moved to Philadelphia, and she is right here. He made a fortune during his smuggling days and invested it in buying all up surplus, war surplus in Europe. However, on the trip back to the United States, the U.S. government released all domestic war surplus, and he lost all the fortune that he would have made. But he did start, or caused to be started, one of the first Army-Navy surplus stores through a friend of his, which became Goldberg's Army-Navy surplus. This distinguished gentleman here is Mendel Margulis, or Mendel Trachtenberg, I should say. He was a brother to our grandmother. The back of the photo shows that it was taken in Odessa, Russia. This is our father when he was going to the Merchant Marine Academy. He went to the Merchant Marine Academy in Philadelphia, intending to be a naval officer. However, as he said it, when they told him to carry the rigging up to the top of the mast, he decided that he wanted no part of the Navy and so resigned. These next two photographs are of our father. I don't know what year, but I remember the reason they're smaller is I remember Mom saying she was mad at our father one day and ripped him up. Presumably this was before they were married, because after all, everyone knows when you get married, you don't have any arguments. This is another photograph of us in front of the restaurant on Church Street or Market Street with our mother in between. This is a photograph of you. Oh, don't you look cute? And this is a photograph of both you and I together. If you'll notice that we've always been dressed in the most fashionable attire. And for what it's worth, you're on the left. They never would let me get a haircut till I was about 4 years old. In 1932, with the death of Grandma, the restaurant was closed. And in 1934, we moved to 2936 Wishart Street, which is right around the 29th and Allegheny area. There we had another addition to the family. This is Seymour. This must have been taken 1934 or 35. There he is again. Notice the tapestries that are now in style. Here's the two of us. I'm the one who's moving. And here we are, the best of buddies, you and I. Again. There's Pop holding us, one of the few times we've been to that close together. He stayed still, but we didn't. And here's Pop again holding Seymour. And here we are again, still can't stay still. And here is Pop again holding Seymour. This is our cousin Jack, who came to visit us one day. This, of course, is you. You stayed. And here is Seymour. Some interesting things happen at that area. I remember once at night we were playing, and I picked up a rock and threw it down the street to a bunch of kids that were down the other end of the street. Not too long afterward, that rock or a different rock came sailing back and hit you right on top of the head, causing a little boo-boo, and you started to bleed and you were mad. However, you always had the thing of, let's get even, and I remember you chasing me in the house one day, and you stopped, pulled the carpet out from under me because I was ahead of you, and I went crashing into the radiator, splitting my skull open, requiring 14 stitches to close the wound in my forehead. You laughed. You thought it was funny. But then I thought it was funny when they hit you with the rock, so we're even. I remember other things we did occasionally at that street, such that when Mom and Pop would go away, once or twice we would take from the second floor a mattress, take it downstairs to the bottom of the steps, and we had a long hallway, and we would take go running down the hallway and leap off the top of the steps, fly over all the steps, and land on the mattress. You know, today you did that, it's crazy, but you do these things when you're a little kid, when you don't know any better and you have no fear of heights. Another thing we used to do, and I don't know if you remember this, is that there used to be a whole bunch of billboards that would ring around 29th and Allegheny area. And we would climb up on top of the billboards, which were on top of a hill, get on top of the billboard, and walk. It must have been a mile walk just on the edge of the billboards, and it must have been about a 30-foot fall if we fell. But it's, again, when you're little, you do a lot of crazy things. During the 30s, as you know, we had the Depression, and in order to work, our father, worked for the WPA, and he had the requirement to be the supervisor one of the supervisors while they were building the athletic field in Olney High School. Because it was Olney High School, he moved us in 1936 from Wishart Street to Olney High, and he and Mom opened up a luncheonette, which he's standing on the corner, right opposite Olney High School. And the address was 102 West Ashdale Street. And he named the luncheonette the Trojan. Actually, the kids at Olney High named it, he had a contest. While there, we all grew up a little bit bigger. This is Seymour. This is you, and part of Seymour. And this is Mom and Pop, you, Seymour, and part of me. And here we have Seymour all by himself playing on the street. Our mother was born in Shamokin, Pennsylvania, and she had some brothers and sisters, Aunt Marie, Uncle Tom, Aunt Ruth. And so in March 23rd was Sunday, 1941, we took a drive, you were there also, up to Shamokin, Pennsylvania so she could see her family. She hadn't seen them in many a year other than her sisters and brothers. Seymour did some traveling too. Here in August 24th, 1941, he was up in Connecticut. This was a beach up there. He went up to stay for about 2 months with Uncle Tom and Aunt Marie. Now Pop, he would travel too, but sometimes when he traveled, he would travel incognito so he wouldn't attract attention. And here he is when he went to Harrisburg for an inauguration of somebody, some Democrat, in 1940 or 41 or whatever, but here he was being very much the man that no one would notice. He had a huge sword on the side that he wore on the side, and on the bottom, I remember, it had a little wheel. When you pull the sword out, he had this long sword case. This sword was only about 8 inches long. One of the things that happened when we moved to Ashdale Street, we both went to Olney Elementary School. Prior to that, when you were in Wishart Street, you were going to school at Wishart Street, and I remember distinctly, almost like it was yesterday, that one day you had started the first grade, not kindergarten, but one day, shortly after starting school, you came back and announced that you knew how to read, and that was very good because you could read. This happens to be Olney High School, and this happens to be my school picture. I think you might know a couple people there, Leon. The one at the top is Larry Eisman. He's the top left. I don't know if you know anybody else there, but I think you did know Larry Eisman. And the person here is Ozzie Dostro, whose father had a dentist office on Rising Sun Avenue and the Boulevard. While we lived on Ashdale Street, quite a few things happened to us and family and what have you. One, our father used to get involved with the principal of Olney High School, a fellow by the name of Montagna. And my father used to have many arguments with him about open lunch. And many times when the truant officer, a fellow by the name of Al Clearwater, would come around at the time, the kids would run through the little luncheonette we had, through a storm cellar, a storm door, into the basement of the house. We lived right at 102 West Ashdale Street. And in fact, Clearwater still was working there when you and I started high school. It seemed that every time as we got closer to the time where we would start high school, we moved a little bit further away. And we moved to, from 102 West Ashdale, we moved, I guess it was in 1940, we moved to 4932 Rising Sun Avenue, where Pop, Mom opened up a restaurant. Now, you only met a lot of people there, but we still lived in the city or the community of Olney. And one of the significant things I remember you doing is throwing a checkerboard at me because you lost. You hated to lose anything and broke a neon sign. And that made Pop a little bit unhappy because he had just come back from the funeral of our grandfather. I remember war being declared in 1941 there. We were serving breakfast in the restaurant, and when the announcement came over, there were quite a few GIs who immediately left because they were told to report back to their base. And we lived in 4932 until 1944, at which we moved to another place. I think here it might be apropos to see some of the rest of our family. This was our grandfather, Morris, or Moishe Margulis. And at the time this was taken, he was living in Atlantic City with my father's brother, his youngest brother, our Uncle Willie. They lived at 306 Mulock Terrace in Atlantic City. And I remember one time you and I went down to visit them. We took the train down from Camden, I believe, and we were there only one day staying with Uncle Willie and Aunt Ida, and I developed a heat rash and or something. They put us on a train and set us back. So we only had about 1 or 2 days vacation in Atlantic City. This is the rest of some of the family. This is Mom on the left and Pop, grandfather, and this is Aunt Ida, and this is Manny. Manny has since moved to Florida. He's changed the name to Manny Margulis, and I saw him down in Florida about 5 or 6 years ago, but I'm not sure whether he's still alive. And he's remarried, but Manny is the brother of Jack, who you saw the picture of before. And now we have Uncle Sidney and his wife Rhoda and his daughter Jewel. Now, Uncle Sidney, as you probably remember, we were very much afraid of, but toward his last years, he's been out here to California I think once or twice, and I used to go visit him every time I go on the East Coast for quite a while. I would make it a triangle by going to Florida in Miami, seeing him for a day, and then going on to my business somewhere else in the East Coast. And I did go to his funeral when he died several years ago. His wife Rhoda had died earlier, and Jewel, that's another story. She's really not such a jewel at that. As I said earlier, the older we would get in approaching high school age, the further and further we would move away from where we lived. And in 1944, we moved from 4932 Rising Sun Avenue to 4801 B Street, just across from the Felton Movies. And there, my father opened up a restaurant with my mother doing the cooking, called Bernard's Restaurant. It has subsequently been sold years later and is now a Chinese restaurant, I think. I think it's still there. It's been years since I've seen the place. But we moved to a community called Feltonville. And it was a very, very nice community in that we both got to know a lot of people, and it's rather unique in that everybody all got to know each other. You had your own group of friends, and I was fortunate enough a couple years ago to be able to attend one dinner at the Feltonville Men's Association, which I really enjoyed seeing everybody. This is Pop standing right outside the restaurant, Bernard's Restaurant. And here is Seymour dressed to the nines in his cowboy suit. I think he was going to rob a bank or something like that, but first he had to have his refreshment. Here he is. This is his horse. Actually, it's my bicycle, but he thought it was his horse. And here we have Mom and Pop and Seymour. We're at the Boulevard Airport. Took a ride up there, and I was taking the picture. It's later at that airport that I started to take flying lessons many years ago, but something I never completed. This is at the back of the restaurant at 4801 Front Street. That's Mom there. I remember us going down to Atlantic City. I don't forget what year it was, but it was a Mother's Day because Mom is wearing a little orchid. And I remember we went to a restaurant. I think it was Captain Starnes, and we went to the movie and saw the picture of Dorian Gray. So that, if I knew what year they released the picture of Dorian Gray, I would know what year this is, but it was during the war years. This also is a picture of Mom during that time. One time we were down Atlantic City at the beach. Here Seymour and I are, and Here is three of us with Pop taking the picture, sitting on the running board of his 37 Cadillac. My father was kind of different, and as Leon probably will remember, when he was 12 and I was 11, when my father would go down to Atlantic City, he would pull over on the side of the road and let the both of us drive for about 10 or 15 minutes each. And many times during the war, for 2 years specifically, they used to close the restaurant up on Sunday, and he and my mother would go down to the USO every Sunday and during the summertime and work at the USO cooking and serving sandwiches. Atlantic City was a big place during the 40s for soldiers recuperating from wounds and what have you. This picture was taken at the restaurant, and this is Uncle Tom and Aunt Marie. It was taken September 15th, 1946. Previously, in 1941, they came down and they took Seymour away to Connecticut in 41, and I'm not sure now whether they were just returning him or not. Here we have four of the family. Leon, you seem to want to not get involved in pictures for whatever reason. And here is in Atlantic City near the miniature golf course, and that's Seymour and his friend Bobby James. Here is Uncle Tom again and me, and this is me. And if you look at the right, there is the old 34 Plymouth that you and I both used to drive. There's rather interesting stories about that, which I'll say later. This is the 37 Cadillac that my father had, and I had just painted it at that time. Again, I forget what year it was. Here is Seymour, and there is the 34 Plymouth. And in the back, the person in the back is my oldest friend, Bob Beeler. I guess I've known Bob for 50 years. Here is Leon here. I'm not sure whether he is throwing the ball to Bob to catch or just throwing the ball at Bob to hit him. And here I am against a car, however you can't see it very well. I think this is the only picture I have of us when we lived at 4932 Rising Sun Avenue. And I think my Uncle Tom had driven down with his Pontiac there, and I think that's the only picture we have from all that time. During the time we lived at 4801 Front Street, it was a lot of fun. We started high school, and I think finished high school at that time. I finished in 49. Leon had gone into the Army sometime around that time. He was stationed at, I think, Ben Hill Farms in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, but he used to come home every weekend, and it was like he had never gone. Do you remember those days, Leon? Again, getting back to learning to drive, my father had let us drive for a while, going back and forth down the shore. In those days, you drove on recap tires because you couldn't get new tires during the war, and the recaps seemed to last about 2 trips to the shore before they came apart. My father let us drive this 34 Plymouth, and I remember I got my license at 15. My father was mad at Leon, and so I got my license at, he told me to go down and get my license. And I remember I had a learner's permit, so did Leon. I didn't even have their own learner's permit. And in this 34 Plymouth, there was Billy Klein, Leon, and myself, and I was going to try and teach Leon how to drive a little bit. And so I was proceeding along around C Street, and I forget the name street, but I hit a car. And I remember Leon hitting me on the head. He was sitting in the back, hitting me on the head, and I was trying to get away, and I drove up over the pavement, finally came to a stop. And I got out, and there was this gentleman had in the car, in his car, he had a couple sailors with him, and I thought, oh boy, I don't even have a license or even a learner's permit, and we're going to go to jail. But the guy just looked at his car, made a little dent in it. He looked at me and just said, "You shouldn't be allowed to drive." And he got in his car and drove off. Well, suffice it to say, later on I did get a license. And I remember the day of getting my license. It was in the wintertime, but again, I was 15 and a half or thereabouts. And we had to go down to Philadelphia, downtown on Market Street or Chestnut Street or someplace like that, to get a pick up pants from Leon's. I think it was at Bonds. And it was a beautiful, beautiful day. It was warm, and we drove down there in our t-shirts. And since there was no parking spots, I was going to drive around the block while Leon ran in and got his pants from Bonds. And all of a sudden, it got so cold and started to snow, and I had to circle the block 2 times, me and my brand new license. And Leon came out, and we got in the car, and in the meantime it turned so cold, and in this 34 Plymouth, as is typical of most cars of that vintage, the heaters were hardly workable if there was a heater, and we were freezing to death. But there was a shortcut that we would take invariably. As we would come up Fifth Street, we would turn off right before Erie Avenue and right at 5th and Erie, and would save maybe a quarter of a mile. And Leon made this turn, and as he did so, he skidded and hit another car. And it was a dead silence. The snow by now was about 6 inches deep, and you couldn't hear anything as it is when it snows. And we sat there for a couple minutes. The car we hit flew down about a quarter of a block. Both doors came open, and the grill was a little bashed in. So we sat there, and since no one came out, we drove off. Now the car had it was a black car at that time, and it had a red stripe. And Leon and I were always painting this 34 Plymouth. It would be black one week, and red the next, and blue the next. And so the following week, or the following day, we repainted the car again, but it was about a year before we would take that shortcut down to the place. The only problem that the 34 Plymouth had was that the bumper brackets were bent up a little bit. During the period of time when we lived on Rising Sun Avenue, and we had our Front Street, when we had the restaurant, my father built a restaurant, closed the restaurant called Bernard's, and built a restaurant in Walnut Street at 1522 Walnut Street. And it used to be the Homestead, and his partner who wanted him to go into this restaurant, Al and Jack Heffler, made a lot of money on the black market. They were butchers, and my father built this gorgeous restaurant. Well, one day a man came into the restaurant. I used to go down there every day practically during the summertime. But a man came into the restaurant and asked my father what he was going to do on the walls. And my father didn't know, and he said, "Look, I am an artist. I want to get started. So if you will allow me, I would like to paint a scene downstairs in oil of an English hunting scene, and upstairs of a Mexican siesta scene. And I think if I can do that, I can get my start, because people would recognize my name, and my name would become popular." And my father said, okay, and he did all this for the grand sum of only $1,000. Now this man's name is Willard Barrow, and really from that restaurant paintings that he did, he became the biggest muralist in Philadelphia and New York. I'm not sure if he's still alive. However, when my father finally left that restaurant, he opened up his other restaurant, Bernard's, and he had Willard Barrow make him 4 paintings, at which time, this is one, I have the other, and I believe, Leon, you have the other 2. These paintings were $100 each, I remember that, and this was about 1946 or 47. One of the things, interestingly enough, during this period of time, well, we had the restaurant about 1948 or 49, I remember, that television was coming into its own, and we never got people coming to the restaurant on Tuesday night because everybody was staying home watching Milton Berle. So I remember my father getting a television set. It was a 12-inch round screen Zenith, and he would have that on in the restaurant at Tuesday night, so people would at least come in and see go to the come into the restaurant to eat. When we were living at 4801 North Front, we made a move, and somehow my father must have liked certain numbers and addresses, but we moved to 4801 B Street, which was 2 blocks away. And while there, certain things happened. Seymour had gone into the service, I had gone into the service. This is Seymour. I think this was before he went to Korea. This must have been in 1951. This is me in Germany in 53, and this is me in, I guess, just out of basic training about 1952. During this period of time, my parents also had opened up a little luncheonette at 19th and near Spring Garden, and my father, being the ham he is, seemed to had a little accident with his car, and it was a 49 Mercury, I remember that. During this period of time, in 1954, my parents moved to 811 North McGee Avenue in Oxford Circle, and I think that's about the time Leon met Barbara, and shortly before their marriage, or maybe it was after the marriage, I don't know. But during that period of time, my father and mother again had luncheonettes at different places, and eventually Leon got married. During this period, 1954 and the 50s, my father had concessions at a place called, in Summers Point, called Bay Shores, and also Tony Mart, and this is my mother and Seymour, and these 2 places, and these were taken in February 1954, quite a while ago. Now, when Leon got married, he did what many people did. He got himself a tuxedo. First he got himself a bride-to-be, then he got himself a tuxedo. And here he is, dressed in his tux, the day of his wedding. Now, I don't remember much about his wedding, except I remember they told me I fell down a flight of steps. I don't remember where I parked my father's car. I must have had a grand time. They tell me that I danced with everybody there, the girls that is. Not to be outdone, seeing Leon in a tuxedo, I decided that I would attend a wedding and I could wear a tux too. However, my tuxedo had nothing to do with my wedding, but was a friend of mine getting married. No. After the wedding, as things happened, Leon's wedding that is, he and Barbara ended up having Frankie and Patty. And there you can see him. And Frankie, I think, still looks the same, identical. As one becomes two, then two becomes three, and three becomes four, and four becomes five, and what have you. And here we have Frankie and Patty, and I'm not sure if that's Linda or not. I'm not sure what year this was taken. I think it was at Leon's house, and of course, looking at Seymour right there, he looks like one of the Blues Brothers, but I'm not sure which one. I don't think they had one with that little bit amount of hair, Seymour. And this, we then moved to 86 or 36 North 18th Street, and we lived there for a while. Oh, Leon, I guess this is about the end of it. I could go on and on and on. However, and I've got many, many, many photographs here that I could put up there. However, I'm sure that you might be a little bit tired of looking at this. However, in any event, I'd like to wish you a happy 60th birthday and many more. And if I could afford it, we would come out there. But be that as it may, we can't quite do it. But Lisa would like to wish you a happy birthday also, and so would my daughter Deborah. She happens to be in school. She graduates Loyola Marymount in next month in May. She's taking a history major and a Latin major and taking Greek, but I'm not quite sure what she wants to be. She wants to go on to law school, but she wants to help the poor. There's not much money in that, but if that's what she wants to do, maybe she'll find some poor people with a lot of money, I hope. Well, again, happy birthday, and I sure wish that I could be there to see some of the people I haven't seen for years, including your children and people like Abe Tankle, who I understand will be there, and some other people.
Hi, Leon. Very happy birthday to you and many more.
This is what's known as camera shock.
Oh yeah, hi Barbara. I hope you're having a great day.
I've decided to add a couple more things. For what it's worth, Leon, this is a crest of a family crest that's supposed to be accurate, plus or minus 20%, I guess. And this is a little thing that goes along with it. I think I sent it to you, a certificate, but basically it says that it's an old, the name is a Hebrew derivation. I think I sent you a copy of this a long time ago.
It means pearl.
And it's a derivation of the word margut, which means pearl. Before, my wife couldn't think of anything to say, and now she could think of all sorts of things to say. I did remember a couple other things recently on that perhaps your wife and kids and friends might get a kick out of. I know you like to gamble, but I don't know if you ever told them about when you came out here many years ago, probably about 1960, 63, I guess, or 64, and you were out here for a visit, I think, to Lytton, and you were going to go to Las Vegas to make your fortune and then home. And in fact, I remember I had to loan you $100 so you can go to Las Vegas. Come to think of it, I don't know if I ever got it back, but that's another story. But you went to Las Vegas, and 3 hours after I took you to LAX, and we lived very close to the airport at that time, I got a phone call, and it was from you. And it seems that you were back at LAX, and that you went to Las Vegas, half-hour plane ride there, and you, within something like 20 minutes, managed to lose all your money. But you did have a plane trip back to LAX because you want to catch a plane out the next day to go back to Philadelphia. So I came down to pick you up and put you up at our place. I think you slept on the couch, but I think that was the shortest trip in history I know of anybody who went to Las Vegas to gamble. Because one, if you discount the half hour or 45 minutes flying time, you probably lost the money in about 20 minutes. But I just happened to think of that. You know, the other thing I mentioned before, that you learned to read very, very quickly, but I guess you and I both were avid readers, and when we used to go to the library at Feltonville, they allowed both you and I to take books out of the adult section, I think at about age 11, because we read everything in the children's section, I think several times. And I don't know if you still have your collection of Fantastic Adventures and Amazing Adventures and the sports magazines, but we used to read those quite a bit, and of course you read, I think, more than I did, but that was a rather interesting period. By reading, you learn so much. But just allowed, you know, just being reading the books we did and being allowed to take books out early was, I think, pretty good, big thing. Well, this is about approaching the end of this program, and naturally I couldn't complete it without showing our daughter Deborah. Here she was about 8 years old when she was taking accordion lessons. She still takes music lessons. She plays the accordion, the organ, the piano, the guitar, the banjo, and almost the tin whistle, Irish tin whistle, electronic saxophone, and almost any instrument with a keyboard on it. Here's a picture when we were about 8 years ago when we went to Hawaii. Debbie is in the middle. And this is when Debbie graduated high school. Or rather not high school, junior high, just prior to going to high school. And this is the most recent photograph of Lisa and I. This was taken in the past. And now we have to say the end.